Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Little Marketing Podcast, where we provide small business owners across the globe with smart and tangible marketing advice for your small business. One of the key catchphrases that's out there when it comes to marketing is target audience. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about 5 things that you need to consider when it comes to choosing your target audience and when it comes to actually marketing to that audience and the impact that it can have on your business and on your profit. So let's get into today's episode. So the first thing that I want you to think about when it comes to your target audience is actually choosing the right one from the very beginning. Now, over time, your audience may evolve, but at the very beginning, when you're thinking about who you're going to provide your product or service to, I want you to think about how you can really focus in on an audience that is potentially different to who the competition targets, so you can eliminate the competition and so that you can start to what we call position. And if you've listened to any of our podcasts before, you'll know that positioning is all about positioning your business and your brand in the minds of your customers that is different to the competition, that eliminates the competition, or where there is the least amount of competition. So I want you to have a think about how your audience can do one of those things so that you really have a real focus in who your audience is and who you can be most profitable with, who you can easily market to, and who you can offer the best product or service to when it comes to that particular audience. So choosing the right audience is key going forward, and I'm going to talk about the impact that it has on other pieces of your marketing and why choosing the right audience is so important. So really have a think about how you can focus in on one that eliminates the competition and really positions you as a bit of an expert when it comes to what it is that your business and your brand stands for and what it is that your business and your brand offers to that particular audience. And I'll put a link above when we talk more about positioning, so if you've never heard us talk about positioning before, you can go and have a listen to understand what positioning is and why it's so important for the success of your business. So once you have chosen your positioning, the second thing to consider is being explicit around who your audience is. So I don't want you to be grey about communicating your audience. I want you to be super obvious and communicate it in a really obvious way across all of your touch points. So whether it's in your social media posts, whether it's in your social media description, whether it's on your website banner, whether it's through the copy and description within your website, all of your marketing touch points need to communicate explicitly around who your audience is and who you provide your product or services to. Now, the reason that is so important, imagine there are 2 businesses. They both have the same type of audience. So let's choose plumbers, for example. Let's pretend we have a plumber and he targets commercial properties. So if you go to one website and there's a plumber that says, we do everything for everybody, and then you go to another website and says, we are the commercial plumbing experts, then if you are in the commercial space and you are looking for a plumber, and you go to those 2 websites, you would feel like the needs match is more with the business that talks about you so that you feel comfortable and you go, hey, that's the need that I'm looking for. That's a match. That's who I'm going to choose. So you need to make sure that you don't hide behind who your audience is, but scream it from the rooftops. Be super obvious so that if that audience comes across you, then you have a high chance of them choosing you over your competitor who speaks generically about the product or services they provide and the audience of who they actually target. So be super explicit and don't hide behind and be ashamed or be shy about who your audience is. So just a quick break. If you're loving what we're doing, we'd love you to subscribe and even share the content if you think there's other business owners who would also get value out of what you're hearing today. We know that there's people across the globe listening to all of our podcasts, which we love. So the more you share, the more you subscribe, the more you give us a rating and review, the more people we can help and the more impact that we can have. Okay, let's get back into it. Which leads us on to the third consideration when it comes to target audience, is that it then makes your marketing and the implementation of your marketing a whole lot easier. Because you think about it this way, all of your copy and your words in all of your marketing will all refer to a particular audience. So you're going to start to see consistency across all of that. So people will start to understand who you do your work for and who you provide your product or services to. So the marketing message is always the same. And when it comes to actually marketing, it makes it a whole lot easier. It also makes it easier when it comes to choosing things like imagery. So again, if you're a commercial plumber, then the imagery will be related to commercial types of properties. So again, it makes the marketing of your business a whole lot easier because you have a real focus on the audience. So imagery, wording, and then just the cohesiveness and the consistency of the marketing message and imagery that's going out there, so that over time, that's what builds your brand, consistency. By people seeing the same message and the same type of imagery over and over again, you have a high chance of cutting through. We live in such an over-communicated and cluttered world. By having consistency in the message and the imagery that gets out there, then you have a higher chance of actually cutting through to your correct target audience and those that you provide your product or service to. And further to that, you're not always having to kind of reinvent the wheel. If you have all these different types of audiences and you're trying to always reinvent what the imagery should look like and what the wording should look like, whereas if you have a real focus on who you're targeting, then that message and that visual side of things becomes really consistent, and it makes it easier for you when you're actually implementing your marketing. So let's get on to the fourth point. So if you've chosen your audience, you've been really explicit around your audience, and it's making your marketing easier, what it's now going to start to do, and this is the fourth key consideration, is that it means that you will start to be positioned as an expert. And that's what you want to do. In the minds and the eyes of your audience, you want to be the expert in terms of who you provide your product or service to, so that if you are positioned as an expert and they see you as an expert, then the chances are they're going to gravitate more towards you. They'll tell friends and family that they've engaged an expert in a particular field or a particular product. And at the end of the day, as consumers, and put yourself in the shoes of a consumer or a client, we all like to deal with experts in their field. We all like to deal with the best in the business. So if you are positioned and have a real focus on your audience, you're consistent in that message, and people are seeing that same message and that visual all the same, then you are really starting to position yourself as an expert. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, and that's why consistency is so important, because you need to do it consistently from a frequency perspective, so as often as possible, and consistently from a visual and a message perspective. And so again, over time, you build your brand and your business, and you really start to position yourself as an expert in who you do your product or service offering to. And by positioning yourself as an expert, it gives you the option to think about your pricing strategy and how you can maybe price as a leader and potentially increase your prices because you are the best in the business. And we know generally, and I use the medical industry in a lot of our examples, that because when you go to a GP, they generally, if there's something a bit more serious, they send you off to a specialist. And when you go to a specialist, you generally pay a whole lot more. And because they are a specialist, they can charge a little bit more. So that your industry, regardless of your industry, and again, there's some exceptions, but regardless of your industry, because you are positioned as an expert, you can probably charge a little bit more, which ideally increases your profit margin. And at the end of the day, we're all in business to make a great profit. So have a think about that and really think about how, by choosing your audience, can really position you as an expert, and the domino effect it can have on your pricing strategy and your profit and things like that. And the fifth key point when it comes to target audience is that because you know your audience so well and you really are focused in on that, then allows you to really be able to innovate a whole lot quicker, because you know the intricacies, because you speak to your clients and customers, and because you are an expert in that field and you're engulfed in that industry and that audience all the time. The ability to innovate quicker and the ability for your team and yourself to come up with ideas because you know your audience so well becomes a whole lot easier and happens a whole lot quicker. You're not having to reinvent and understand your audience each and every time you want to innovate, but because you know them so well, just by default, innovation will become a whole lot easier, which then reinforces the fact that you are an expert in that audience. It then reinforces the fact that you have positioned yourself as an expert in that product or service offering for that particular audience. So you can see the domino effect that the audience has on all of these things. Domino effect on the consistency of your marketing, makes your marketing a whole lot easier, makes you positioned as an expert, makes you then able to innovate a whole lot quicker. So it's just these constant kind of domino effects and positive elements to your business, all because you have a focus in on your audience. And for those that understand positioning, or those that have gone back and listened to some of our podcasts about positioning, so that's just the impact of having a focus on an audience. So imagine you also have a focus on your service or product offering, or you have a focus in the location that you do this product or service offering in. The more you have a focus on all these elements of your business, the easier it is for marketing, the easier it is to position yourself as an expert, the easier it is to execute the marketing, the easier it is to innovate. So there are so many domino effects to having a strong positioning and having a real focus on elements of your business. So if you recap the importance and considerations when it comes to target audience, so firstly, it's choosing the target audience so that you're different to the competition, where you eliminate the competition or where there is the least amount of competition. 2, it's then being really explicit around who that audience is so that you're super obvious, so that wherever they see you, they know exactly who you help. 3, it then has an impact on making it easier for your marketing. So the marketing message and the visuals around your marketing become really consistent because you know exactly who your audience is, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you're doing a piece of marketing activity. 4, it starts to really position you as an expert in that particular audience, and people start to gravitate, and again allows you to think about your pricing strategy. And 5th, because you know your audience so well, it allows you to innovate by default because you know them so well. Ideas come quicker to you and you're able to move quicker than your competitors. So they're the 5 key things to think about when it comes to target audience. Make sure you're sharing this information. We hope you got a heap out of today's podcast episode. Plenty of shorts in the meantime, and we'll see you back next week for another episode of the Little Marketing Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Please note that all the information provided on this podcast is general in nature and is not intended to be specific advice to your individual situation. Please be sure to engage a professional for a customized approach to your business and personal circumstances.